but it all relates back to The Last Dance. And so maybe this could possibly be Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams' last hurrah, last dance together while they're in Green Bay. That's not words they've said. It's just an Instagram post, but something we could read into.
Yeah, and if you're the Green Bay brass, I mean, if you watch The Last Dance and you see how vilified Jerry Krause was in that thing, despite all the great that Jerry Krause did there, and as respected as a guy who put together and constructed a dynasty, all the great he did, people just remember that he allowed Michael Jordan to walk out that door and that dynasty leaving money on the table. If you're Gudikins, if you're Murphy, if you're that Green Bay brass, all the good that you've done there in Green Bay, if you allow a talent like Aaron Rodgers and now insert Davante Adams into the mix, if you allow these guys to walk, everything you've ever done in your career is thrown out the door. It's not remembered. It's only, how did you mess this thing up? And it speaks to a mismanage of your most important personalities and your most important talent. There's no worse misstep than what's going on right now in Green Bay.
Oh, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Okay, so we've learned this over the weekend, but let me reiterate to you, and when I say we've learned this is for a different reason, but nonetheless, if Rodgers does not show up to camp, he can be fined $50,000 per day until he reports to training camp. That's a keynote from the latest CBA, which became official back in 2020. So under the NFL's new collective bargaining agreement, players are fined $50,000 for every day of training camp missed. Teams cannot forgive these fines for missing training camp. That is a lot of money. Now, not for a guy who makes, whatever it is. What does he make? How many millions a day?
He makes a lot of money, but it speaks to the defiance and how he's willing to play in the mud here.
Right.
Because he feels like he was done so wrongly by just simply not being communicated with. I think it would have been one thing if you go get Jordan Love, but to communicate with him as to why you were going to go do this. If you're going to make a tough decision as management, you have to address the why to the important people who deserve to know that. And Aaron Rodgers is at the top of that list. So now Aaron Rodgers is saying, hey, I'll make this as messy as you want to make it because I've been wrong. And when you mention the situation, his representation, David Dunn, the guy who's sitting there having those negotiations on his behalf, his agent, he went through this in 2004 with Carson Palmer with my Cincinnati Bengals. Growing up in Cincinnati, loving the Bengals. Carson Palmer was our future. He was the franchise. David Dunn said, hey, same scenario. Mm-hmm. Carson Palmer is going to retire because he doesn't want to be here in Cincinnati for different reasons, but he will not play. Bengals, Mike Brown, management, go ahead. We'll play this game with you, the game of chicken. And you know who ended up losing that thing? The Cincinnati Bengals, because they had to move on from their quarterback in 2004 in that season because Carson said, I'm retiring. I ain't playing. And eventually when push came to shove, the Bengals had to make that move in October of that season to move him to the Raiders. Now they got back two good pieces in Dre Kirkpatrick and ultimately Gio Bernard, two pieces on the offense and defense that worked well, but Carson ended up leaving. And if you read between the lines, same representation in David Dunn, you almost assume it's going to be the same kind of thing in Green Bay if it's any indicator what history was prior.
So Carson Palmer didn't show up to training camp, and he didn't show up to the first couple games of the season. He ended up being traded in October. So that is definitely something to look to in terms of a timeline. Again, they have the same representation, so it's a good thing you pointed that out. But what has Aaron Rodgers been up to this whole time, right? We've seen him play a lot of golf, but has he been training? Jeremy Fowler, ESPN senior NFL reporter, says he has. Take a listen.
Davante Adams' talks did break down on his contract. I'm told they've been talking behind the scenes for a while, and there was a situation where he had to be the highest paid player because he's become the highest paid receiver in the league. Executives, coaches, they all know it. He's produced at a high level, and so he needs that in order to move on, and the Packers couldn't quite get there. We're talking 22, 23 or more $1 million per year. So with their contract structure, that was going to be hard to do right now. So talks have paused. There's still a chance, a lot of time until week 1. But here's the thing, a little wrinkle. If Aaron Rodgers does return, Davante Adams could be incentivized to just play one more year and go into free agency in 2022. Because we know Aaron Rodgers is not long for Green Bay. If he comes back, it could be sort of begrudgingly. Maybe it's a last dance situation. They both play together for one more year, move on.
Okay, so obviously that's not Jeremy talking about the training situation, but nonetheless, that is something of importance. What's going to happen with Davante Adams? Does he come back for one more year and then become a free agent? Does he argue and move on? Does he hold out? Who knows? There's the Instagram post I was talking about earlier that both Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams posted over the weekend. It's of Michael Jordan and MJ on the court, giving each Michael Jordan and MJ, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, both on the court.
Slighting Scottie again. This is why he has issue with people. All please. You see is MJ.
I misspoke. It's freaking what time?
Scotty's taking shots at everybody because he keeps being the forgotten one. That's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, will you relax, okay? I haven't even finished my coffee yet. I'll get around to it. My goodness. Here's one more interesting angle that I want everyone just, take a little bite from this snack. Some sports books have taken down any betting odds related to Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers due to rumors and information about possible retirement. Now, Vegas always seems to be sometimes smarter than the rest of us, sometimes, and we all shake our heads about this. DraftKings and PointsBet pulled NFC North futures bets and more, Packers win totals, all of it. So we will see what happens with that. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. What I do know is at this point, it's open-ended as to what will happen with Aaron Rodgers, but he's going to be fined a lot of money going forward. Caesars William Hill still has odds up for the Packers. We should point that out. But they've pulled the Packers over under season win total, and here's what they do have available. The Packers odds to win the Super Bowl at plus 2,000. Packers odds to win the NFC in general, plus 900. Aaron Rodgers to win the MVP at plus 1,200. And Packers odds to win the NFC North at plus 140. I have no idea if those are good odds.
I would take some of those potentially because there's good value there, assuming this last dance thing plays out. If it doesn't, wow, you got to feel for Jordan Love. Thrown in following one of the all-time greats in NFL history in Aaron Rodgers, and might not be doing it with his number one in Davante Adams. But you as a Chicago Bears fan, I mean, I'm shocked you've been able to hide the smile during this entire conversation.
I tucked my Chicago in this whole time.
Could it luck out any better for you guys? I mean, the Chicago Bears as a fan base and franchise couldn't be in a better spot. You fall into getting Justin Fields.
You didn't fall in. You traded with the Giants.
But the situation presented itself where even the Bears brass couldn't mess that thing up, and then you're in position to get Justin Fields. You might finally have your quarterback. No longer in a national broadcast we have to hear about Sid Luckman over and over and over again. Okay. Matthew Stafford, the only semblance of any kind of hope in Detroit, he leaves for greener pastures. And now you got this going on with Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. It's really you guys in Minnesota right now are kind of sitting there going, okay, I think we got a little bit of a good thing going here. So it's crazy how desolate a situation you can be in, and almost overnight it all changes.
A duel between Kirk Cousins and Andy Dalton. What will happen? Although it will probably eventually become Justin Fields.
It better be Justin Fields. And I'm talking week 1, I hope, for you guys.
It won't be week 1.
It should be week 1.
It'll probably be like week 10. But nonetheless, you're right.
Week 10?
That's when their bye week is. I think it comes. I think it comes either against the Raiders, which I think is like week 5. I'm not exactly sure, or it comes later in the season in the bye week. It all depends on how Andy Dalton plays and how they start out of the gates.
Yeah, you're right. So
it'll be interesting. We will have to wait and see. But yes, this is a good scenario for the Chicago Bears. Should Aaron Rodgers go? You know what I said yesterday? Hey, to be the best, you got to beat the best. I hope Aaron Rodgers stays. I'm like, who am I kidding?
Yeah, you backtracked on that one.
Who am I kidding with that?
Backtracked on that one.
Another quarterback who wants to be traded did show up to training camp, but it might create quite the scene for his team. That's after Jordan has this from Straight Talk.
Oh, Straight Talk. 5G is here, but the big carriers want you to sign a pricey long-term contract to get you in on the action. Well, not anymore, because Straight Talk Wireless has rolled out 5G coverage nationwide.